Well, I guess it's 9 o'clock, right? Yeah. So
Yes.
Dr. Smedecki, if you want to go ahead and get started, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for spending your Friday morning with us. Residents, I know that you always spend Friday with us, but we've got some guests and some fourth years that are getting ready to graduate. The fourth years that are on the call, are you guys planning to do a residency, or are you going out into the real world? If you can just put that in the chat box, that'll kind of help me with the presentation today. So residency, a lot of real world. Okay, a little bit of both. And maybe residency in the future. Perfect. Okay, guys. So the whole idea of doing this, first of all, thank you, Dr. Trevino, for having this put into the program so early. Because we do have 90 days until July 1, and we kind of call this the final four, and we're already in day 17 of this. So we need to catch up. We need to really get a game plan and kind of get our heads on straight during this difficult time. And then I totally understand that this is a challenging time. Some people might have the cabin fever, and some people might be having other things going on. So we're going to kind of talk about that as well, because I think that needs to be addressed. I think there's been a lot of pivoting and changing, and plans change hourly, and we haven't really taken time to really like process how we're feeling. And I think that's important to do. So we can't go back, but we can go forward, and we can make the best of these next 90 days. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. So the outline of today's presentation, we're going to talk about a check-in, basically the current state of the union, how everybody's feeling, and where we're at, because you have to know where you're at before you go forward, right? What our roles are going to be during this time, and it can be a very challenging time, and we'll kind of address that. Then we're going to talk about how to be productive during a time of crisis, essentially. The productivity that you would normally have is obviously not going to be the same level of activity that you would have during a time like this. Daily planning. I'm going to go through top 10 things that I recommend for daily planning, and then some final thoughts. And I definitely want this to be interactive. So I wanted to try to do a poll, but I wasn't able to get all that put into Zoom. So we'll try to just do it through the chat and kind of go from there. Okay. So the current state, I just wanted to check in, and I thought this was beautiful. So when I was first talking about this with my resident, I was like, you know what? This is like what Floridians are made for, right? The hurricane season. And I really feel that this is most correlated to a hurricane. It's coming. You don't know when it's coming. You don't know how bad you're going to be hit by it. You don't know how you're going to be affected, and you need to prepare. Granted, when we get ready for a hurricane, we don't all go buy toilet paper and paper towels, but these were the things that people were getting ready for, right? So I found this on Facebook. One of my friends posted it, and I thought it was a beautiful way of explaining what a lot of people might be going through right now. So we're all in the same storm, right? The hurricane's coming. It may be, hitting harder in some states than others, but we're not in the same storm, right? So some people, it's just sprinkling. This is kind of a break. There's not a lot of activity going in the home. Some of the residents have shared with me, they're in their homes by themselves, so they're kind of going nuts. They don't know what to do. But at the same time, it's peaceful, right? Because you only have to take care of you. So it can be scary and peaceful at the same time. For others, it can be a storm, a little bit scary, disruptive. You might be homeschooling. I really call it crisis schooling. It's really not homeschooling, because homeschooling you get to plan for. This, you kind of got everything dumped on you and you don't even know how to homeschool. And you're working your full-time job. On top of that, if you had someone taking care of family, maybe a sick loved one or your children, you don't have that option anymore. So you're wearing all of these hats at once, and it's just not realistic. And some people are glued to the TV. I kind of talked about that a little bit as well. Getting glued to the TV is the worst thing you can do. You can stay informed, just like with the hurricanes. We never watch the news because they get their ratings by sensationalism and how many people watch the news. So you definitely don't want to buy into that, because that just creates fear, and the more fear, the more people watch. So listening to the CDC, and I'll have some of the resources of what I'm doing. I've watched, I don't watch TV at all. I think some of you know that for the past 10 years, I haven't watched TV, and it's been wonderful. I don't miss it. And since this has happened, I've watched it maybe 2 hours total, and the fear just kind of bowls in, and I just think it's ridiculous with how they're sensationalizing things, and most of it isn't true. So getting your information from like reliable resources is good enough. And I haven't missed anything. I knew about when I had to stay home, when I had to wear a mask. So because if I'm not getting it from my CDC and the little text link that I'm going to give you guys, everybody's posting it on Facebook. So they're doing all the work for me, right? So I don't need to buy into that stress. Some people, it's a hurricane. It's, you know, tearing at the boards. There's family stress. There's personal stress. Some people are worried about getting sick. Some people are worried about dying. Some people know people that have already passed away from this condition. So there's a lot going on. So I think we just need to kind of all be in that space. And this is kind of an open space. I don't want anybody to feel like if they post something that will know, you know, anything like with the recording and stuff, the chat doesn't get recorded, so you don't have to worry about that. But if some of you want to kind of chat in the chat box how you're feeling, are you in the sprinkle? Are you in the storm? Are you in the hurricane? If you're not comfortable putting that information in there, then I really feel that if you are in a storm, you need to reach up. You need to talk to your residency director, someone that you trust, Dr. Trevino, a faculty member, someone like that. So for me personally, it's sprinkling a little bit. Sometimes it gets a little stormy. As many of you know, my mother is sick with leukemia. My mother-in-law is sick with breast cancer. So we have a lot of things going on that have levels of concern. My husband's working out every day in the field. So we have to take care of those kinds of things. So there's a lot going on in that. And learning how to teach like we have been. It's been a very drinking from a fire hydrant kind of feeling. So anyway, I just think it's just good to be aware of how you're feeling. So current state, when I'm teaching my students at 7:30 in the morning, I think most of them look like this. That's why they don't show me their thumbnails. It's been a very challenging few weeks. We've all had to learn how to pivot. Is basically the best way to describe it. Sometimes you've had to pivot multiple times within an hour, and that takes a lot of energy. And we just kind of have to be aware of that. And I think it's going to continue to be challenging for a while. The community state, you know, Dr. Trevino and Dr. Chrisman were just speaking about that. They were talking about being out in lows. People are starting to get cabin fever. We're in about week 4 of this. Other parts of the country are in week 6, week 8. And I even saw this in week 3. I felt like more people were getting out. I've seen 2 extremes. I've seen people that are pure panicked, and I've seen them wearing gas masks, to the other extreme of not caring. If I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it. To, you know, some people just being completely grossly inappropriate, which kind of buys into the fear. So we've seen the full spectrum. I've also seen more aggressive driving. I don't know if anybody else has seen that, and more careless driving. Some people are just aimlessly driving around, I think, just to get out of the home environment. They're making U-turns in the middle of a 6-lane road, and it's like, what are you doing? You know, rules still apply, even though we're not having as many people on the road. So, and some people put in the chat box that it's sprinkling, some gusts of uncertainty. I think that's a great point. Focusing on what you control, concentrating on what you can control, and that's what we're going to talk about as well today. Some people are saying storming, and you know, that's really important. We need to reach out and reach up to each other. If you are having difficulties and you do need help, just talk to somebody. We're all in this together for sure. Okay. Community states continued. So alcohol sales are up 50%. I think that's something to be aware of. And that happens with any kind of crisis. People use coping mechanisms. Some people reach to different activities, and some of that could be smoking, alcohol, different things like that. Domestic violence, unfortunately, is up 25%, and that will continue to go up. So again, if you are in a situation like that, know that you do have resources available. We have counseling at school. And you can also speak to someone that you trust to try to get resources. So reaching out and reaching up are really the big, one of the takeaways I wanted to do. So coping strategies. What are a couple things that you guys have been doing now that you've kind of been stuck at home? Anything that you're doing that's making you feel better? I know some people are sleeping in, staying in their pajamas all day. Frequent walks is really important. I've been seeing that. I'm set up in my dining room and I see people walking, and some people have routines now that they're up at a certain time every day and they're doing walking. I see cooking, baking, exercising. That's great. And you know, these are the blessings that are coming out of this crisis. Woodworking. I come from a long line of woodworkers. That's pretty neat. So having those outlets are super important, and physical outlets are going to be important in addition to just having mental kind of resources to relax and that kind of thing. Giving that pent up stress a place to go through exercise is going to be really, really important. Okay. So before we get to work, I kind of want to get our frame of mind of how we're all feeling this morning. So what I want you to do is just close your eyes for a minute, and everybody try to do this with me. It's really not corny. This is emotional health, and this is super important as a psych major. So close your eyes, and I just want you to kind of check in with your body. I want you to feel if anything feels tense. I want you to feel your breathing, your chest, muscles. Just kind of give it from a scale of 1 to 10, how all that feels. And I think you might be surprised, because some people might be like, oh, I feel okay. And then when you close your eyes and you kind of center into yourself, you're like, oh, I do feel tense in some of those areas. And so the next thing I want you to do is just do a deep breathing. So most people will breathe from the top of their chest. I want you to do a deep belly breath and just take it all in and hold it for a few seconds. And then go ahead and release that for me. And do that one more time, a deep belly breath in. And hold that for a couple seconds. And then release it. And I want you to say to yourself, or under your breath, the word release 5 times. So just release, 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 release. Now check into yourself now. Do you feel a little different? I know for me personally, I felt like my muscles relaxed a little bit, and I felt a little tightness in my chest when I first started, and part of that's just nerves from talking to everybody, but saying that release did help. So a couple times throughout the day, I encourage you to check in with yourself because it's important to know where you're at. And our words have power. That's the other takeaway I wanted to say. So doing the breathing helped me, but when you say the words release, that's actually telling your subconscious brain to get into your body and to do that activity. The brain doesn't know what's real and what's not real. It only knows what you tell it. So if you're telling it negative things, it's going to look for negative things, and it's going to protect itself by finding validity in the things that you're telling it. So if you tell it negative things, it's going to look for negative, and vice versa if you do the positive. Okay, the next takeaway I wanted to do here is that saying that we can continue to work as if our jobs were normal, that we're just working from home and we're on vacation essentially, is not realistic. We have emotional things that we have to deal with, family things that we have to deal with, and we have to create a normalcy for this time. I know a lot of people talk about this being the new norm, and I don't agree with that. I think this is a pivot time and a transition time into what might become a different normalcy than what we had before. So you want to keep things as normal as possible, doing routines, and we'll kind of talk about that as well. Okay, so roles and planning. If you don't know where you're going, you're surely going to get there, right? It's kind of like not having a goal or a target. You're going to hit it every time because there's nothing to hit. So we definitely need to talk about that. During this time, residency coordinators or someone that you're working with, our role is to serve you. That is our goal. the resident's role, or the person that's about to go out into the real world to find a job, job seeker, that kind of thing, your role is to serve yourself and to serve others. So I kind of wanted to put that out there, that these are the kind of the two roles that we're taking over during this time. Okay. The next thing I want you to do, and we're going to kind of do this together, you can type it in the chat box if you want, or you can just take notes, but strategy is super important, and our military folks probably know this to the minutia, right? So you always want to plan for the worst case scenario. So the way I'm going to design this conversation for the next 30 minutes is as if we're not going back for the rest of the year for the residency. Essentially, we've been together the last time and that's it. So you want to plan for the worst case scenario. Then the second worst case scenario, in my opinion, would be we would go back June 1. So we'd want to plan for that. And then the third case, worst case scenario would be we go back in a couple weeks. So having those three major plans. So I want to ask in the chat box, has anybody thought about it in that way? And if you have, what are the worst case scenarios that you've come up with?
Can I ask a question? I just typed it, but when we do this in the military, we talk about catastrophizing, and when we imagine the worst case scenario, sometimes it's a bit silly. The worst case scenario you're talking about is like a realistic worst case scenario, not that all of a sudden coronavirus mutates and now we can transmit it through video chat, right? I mean, that's a ridiculous worst case, right? We're not planning for the catastrophizing worst case. We're planning for the realistic worst case, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, I think that kind of goes into the rational side of things. And that's kind of why I did that emotional check-in to begin with, because if you start thinking of worst case scenario when you're emotionally not in the good state of mind, you're going to go down that rabbit trail that nobody should go down. So some of the things people are talking about are the next class of residents will not be in clinic during the summer. I think that's a very valid thing that we need to think about. How do we transition a new resident into a program that they've never been in, especially if they're coming from another school or another state, and how do you get them up to speed? We have, special events, weddings are canceled, can't start a job, graduation. Definitely. I had a couple weddings that I was invited to that have been postponed. And they did a resave the date wearing masks. It was kind of cute, but, trying to make lemons out of lemonade, that's a very stressful thing to deal with. Not having a job. So something to take away from that, because I'm seeing that a couple times. You're very fortunate in the position that you're in. So you're a doctor, or you're going to graduate and become a doctor in a few weeks. So when you are at that level of essential personnel, you're never not going to have a job. The job just may not look like the traditional job that you thought it might look. So, being the top 2% of the world, you are going to have to figure out strategies that maybe other people wouldn't have resources available for. So I want to kind of give you that peace of mind that you're not going to not have a job. It's just going to have to look different. Maybe you'll be a telehealth relief doctor. Maybe you'll, there's all kinds of things that you can do, but that's a whole nother presentation. Okay. So before we can go forward, we need to go back to where we started, right? So let's go back to the beginning. Maybe you can say beginning of fourth year or beginning of your residency. What were your goals when you first started the program? Some of you may have written them down. Some of your residency coordinators may have required you to write those down and had check-ins throughout the quarters to kind of see where you're at. You need to look at what your goals were. And now that you've had a pivot moment, you need to figure out how to still achieve those goals to the best of your ability, and think about what has changed since the time you wrote those and the time that you did now. The new goals will basically be based on the ones that you already had, if at all possible. just doing a mind shift and kind of creating a different way of doing those things. So for example, if it was, doing 20 gonios and that was your goal, maybe instead of doing them physically on humans, you might have to do them on something different, stuffed animals, that kind of thing, and watch videos with it. So that's just kind of a raw example, but that's something to think about. So if you haven't made goals, I encourage you to make goals. And there's a whole nother thing that we can talk about on how to make goals. I call them Smarty goals. That's my little way of my mnemonic of making goals. But you definitely need to have goals that are created. And if you don't know how to make goals that are achievable and attainable and realistic, then you need to talk to somebody that knows how to make goals and is very goal oriented, and have them work with you on that. Okay, so let's talk about patient interaction, because most residents are in a residency to be exposed to as many patients as possible. So now that you can't physically be in front of patients, at least not now, hopefully maybe in a few weeks, but in the meantime, how are you going to have patient interaction? How are you going to be able to pivot to be able to still have that opportunity? So some examples are making care calls. You could call every patient that you've seen from the time of your residency, because you all have to keep logs. As long as it's okay with your residency supervisor, go ahead and call them, ask them how they're doing, ask them that the treatments that you gave them, like in low vision, for example, if we gave them a CCTV, are they still using it 6 months later? If not, maybe you could do a virtual training with them, as long as administration would let you do that. Those kinds of things. It might be really neat to kind of see the patients that you had the very beginning of the year, if your treatments really worked, whatever those treatments were. And then looking for patient interactions. Maybe you're able to do telehealth at the residency site that you're at, and working with your preceptor in that way. Okay. Learning goals. So we've got interactions with patients and patient experiences. And if that isn't something that's going to be feasible for you in the next few weeks, then you can go into a learning mode. So what do you want to learn? What are the things that you outlined in the beginning of your residency or your 4th year that you wanted to be able to learn that you still haven't accomplished or you don't feel competent in? And those are the ones that you're going to want to dive deeper into. And then the beautiful thing about the time right now is everybody's home. So if you really want to learn about practice management, and Dr. Pizzamenti is, brilliant at practice management, pick his brain. He's available. Some people have had private practices. Some people are on the lecture circuits. Some people are, had both experiences. Some have worked in the VA. All kinds of things. Think about the resources that you have available and start tapping into those people. The other thing that you can do is getting information from other faculty or other residents. We're kind of cooperating in low vision because it's such a special specialty. We're all banding together, and all the residents are doing presentations around the country, and all the residents are going to have an opportunity of listening to those other residents. So instead of just getting a residency experience at one school, they're going to have an experience of 20 programs. And I mean, how beautiful is that? That is something that has never been able to happen before. And I just think that's really wonderful that we have those resources. So when you're asking you these questions of how you're going to get your learning accomplished, ASCO, Dr. Trevino sent out all kinds of things from ASCO. There's webinars from different companies, Johnson & Johnson, Eschenbach, more that I don't even know of. If other people know of things, please put them in the chat box, and we can create like a link and resource at the end so everybody can be a part of those opportunities, because it's all free right now, which is wonderful. But as you're going through this questioning, I want you to shift from what if scenarios to how can I scenarios. So when you teach your brain to look for something, how can I do something, the answers will come, versus what if scenarios, which kind of creates that fear, and it'll minimize it if it doesn't get rid of it completely. Communication is the third horse, or stool whatever you call it, the third wheel. So communication. How often are you communicating with someone that is in your supervisory positions, whether it's your residency coordinator, your director, your supervisor, administrator, that kind of thing? And how often do you want that contact? So are you doing daily contacts? Are you doing biweekly contacts? And how are you communicating? Some people are really great communicating by phone. Some people are really great face-to-face with that Zoom conversation. Some people really like paper. So in the chat box, go ahead and chat in there for me what your conversations, how often are you communicating with someone above you, and how are you communicating, and is that working? So I know, for example, with our residency, we are doing Zoom conversations. We're also doing phone conversations, three-way conversations with the other residency preceptors. So we have that continual interaction. Text and phone calls, absolutely a few times a week. Some people are saying once a week through Zoom, emailing residency directors. And just know that they're available for everything, whether it's residency questions, personal questions, you know, we're all in this together. If you find that you need more communication with someone, be sure to just ask for that. Ask for what you need. I think a lot of times we can assume that people are doing okay when they're not reaching out. And we don't know, because everybody's in a different situation, like we talked about in the beginning. We don't know what kind of storm you're having, if you're having one at all. And in the same token, you don't know what your mentors are going through either. So have a little grace with them as well. If you're like, oh man, I wish my coordinator would reach out more, or why aren't they calling me? Just know that everybody's got their own thing that they're going through, and this is not anything anybody's gone through before. So we're all kind of learning as we go. Accountability is going to be the last arm. Accountability partners are crucial. I know it's very easy, myself included, to not stay in the routine that you were in before you had to go into this pivot position. So having somebody that you're accountable with, if you're not a morning person and you know that you need to get up to get activities done, maybe you need to have a text call at 8:30 every morning where you guys both text and say, hey, I'm up, I'm doing this, this, and this today. And then the other person says, okay, I'm doing this, this, and this. You know, I've reached out to some students and asked how the students are doing, and I'm getting conversations of, I'm not getting, one said, well, the online lectures make me get out of bed. Okay, well you gotta be a little more goal-oriented than that. You're still in school, right? But I can understand that when you've got all this other stuff going on, it's hard to have that self-discipline. So at any rate, having an accountability partner, I think might be something that's important. Okay, productivity. We all have the same amount of time in every day. So if I was to tell you that I would give you $86,400 this morning, and you had to spend it by the end of the day, would you be able to do it? I know I'd be able to do it, right? Some people, it's like the stimulus plan. Let's talk about the stimulus plan, right? So some people got the stimulus plan. Some people are going to spend it. Some people are going to save it. Some people might invest it. Some people are going to squander it. So same thing with this. We all have $86,400 every day, because time is money, right? So this is how many seconds all of us have in a day. You're going to sleep through some of it. You're going to work through some of it, eat through some of it, that kind of thing. So how you spend this time is crucial. So every day you come up with this bank account, and at the end of every day, it's gone and you can't get it back. So how you maximize and use this time is crucial. So think about that number every time you're sleeping in, not getting dressed, those kinds of things. And so there's three kinds of people during these kinds of crises. There's people that get it done. There's people that sit and wait for other people to get it done. They kind of watch and see what's happened, or they just put their head in the sand. And then the third group of people go, what happened? So what kind of person are you during this time? Are you a get it done kind of person? Are you, well, let me just see what everybody else is doing? Or what happened? There was coronavirus? So, and just know that you may not be the same person every day. You may not be a get it done person every day, because like I said, there are emotional things that are put into this as well. So you may kind of go back and forth, but please don't be this last one. You guys as leaders, residents are leaders, no doubt, as well as doctors in general. You guys getting ready to graduate, look for jobs. You're a leader. You're entrepreneurial. You're looking for a career. So you definitely want to be in those first two categories. And the caveat of all of this is that we really aren't in downtime or off time. I know people say, oh, you're working at home and you've got all this free time and that kind of thing. Well, that's really not entirely true. You've got to cope with things. And the other thing is, this is an opportunity to do things productively that you may not have had time to do. So when you were in school or you were in your residency, I'm sure you said, oh, I wish I would have had time to read that journal. Oh, I wish I would have had time to ask so-and-so that, right? You've got the time now. So now you just have to put pen to paper and figure out how you're going to do it. And just like I said, remember, we're all under stress. So we need to have that fine balance of self-care awareness and those kind of things, and know that some days are going to be better than others. Okay, so let's start strategizing these last 90 days. And like, again, I said, I'm going to be totally transparent. So normally I feel that I'm very good at pivoting. Whenever something's happening, there's a great book. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? And I don't remember who wrote it. Maybe Dr. Trevino remembers. It might be Les Anderson, but it's called Who Moved My Cheese? It's a cute little book, and it's super quick to read. And it's scurry, hem, haw, and another little mouse. And anyway, it talks about the 4 personalities and how each of these personalities handle stress and crisis. And so I personally am a scurry. So I will just kind of, okay, she's got moved. Where do I go? I'm always looking for it. But during this transition, there's been fear and concerns that I've had for my family and myself. And so unfortunately on week 2, I did find myself looking like this, and I was like, oh no, that's not good. We need to get out of that. I have some friends that are saying, they don't even know what day it is, right? Because one day just bleeds into the other. And some of us as faculty, we're working 7 days a week, at least in those first couple of weeks, just to get up to speed. So there was a lot to kind of get on board with. That treadmill was moving very fast, and you had to get up to speed. So the purpose of doing this is, one, you have to lead yourself. So how are you going to lead yourself? Are you going to get up every morning and mark your days, bookmark your days? Having routines are super, super important. So, this is the new job. So you wake up at 5:30, you go ahead and do what you have to do. You take your shower, you get ready, you get out of Christmas pajamas and the long sweater, or, what have you. And this is work. And like I said, not every day is going to be as productive as others, but if you have those end marks, that'll be super important. And feeding into yourself every day will be important as well. And if you do those things and you write things out, you're not going to have this feeling of every day being the same day. So game plan after residency, we talked about that a little bit with the 4th years looking for jobs. So residents in particular, can you tell me, are you planning to join a practice? Have you already signed a contract? Are you looking for a job? What are the residents specifically doing? Are some going into research, academia? Okay, so some people are joining practices. That's great. And this is kind of an example, right? So the people that have already looked for jobs and found jobs, congratulations on that, absolutely. But you had a plan, right? And you executed that plan. So, and it's good to think ahead and do those kinds of things, because when you come into something like this, because some people are like, oh, I have plenty of time, right? It's only February, it's only March. Well, things happen in life. And so being able to have that gives you a little bit of peace of mind, I would think. Some people are still working in the military, and that's job security. So that's a blessing in itself, right? Okay. So that is the first thing that you're going to want to think about as far as having the vision. So with your residency, basically having that vision, you want to be employed. 4th years, you want to be employed. So that is basically going to be your vision, mission statement. So from there, you're going to want to brainstorm all the different things that you need to do to be prepared for either obtaining your position, looking for the job, or if you're going into a residency, all the things that you need to do to prepare for a residency. And again, if you're like, well, I don't know how to prepare because I don't know what's going to happen, that's why you've got those 3 stages. You're going to do a brainstorm for the worst case scenario, a brainstorm for 2nd and 3rd case scenario. So you'll go ahead and do that. Okay. So daily planning for these next 90 days. And again, I can talk another time. We don't have time today to go into detail, but I can talk to you how I do a brain dump every Sunday night, and then how I map out I think it was 15 hats that I wear for the school right now. I did that one day. And I call them it's really funny. I should show them. I did birthday hats, and I labeled all of them. So depending on whatever I was doing, I would have that hat. So anyway, I do little things like that. But the point of the story is 15 hats that I wear. With 15 hats, there's a lot of plates going. So I need to make sure that I don't drop a plate. Like for next Tuesday, I need to have a report ready for Dr. Trevino on top of everything else that's going on right now, right? So making sure that those plates don't fall. How do I keep up with my deadlines and those kinds of things? So again, I can do that for another lecture if anybody's interested, but brain dump on Sunday, everything that you've got to do, and then start going into your daily planning. So every week I have at least one goal that I want to accomplish. And that goal is going to be based off the vision that you have cast and the strategies that you've implemented through the beginning of this presentation. So that's the first thing that you want to do. And then to obtain that task, to basically get that goal accomplished, there's little tasks that you're going to do to get that to happen, right? You can't just say you want something to happen and then by Friday it gets done. Doesn't work that way, right? We all know that. So break whatever that goal is into 10 or 15-minute tasks, so that when you have 10 or 15 minutes on a day, you can do something, and that's going to be like your quick win. It's very important to have a quick win, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Okay. The other key thing to be productive during this time is to map out your day. Granted, it may not go as planned, and that didn't happen when we were, going to our jobs. You might plan out that you were going to be in clinic all day and you're going to be able to do Meditrek, and then you got there and fires came up and you weren't able to get that done. So one thing that I do, and it'll be kind of hard for you guys to see, but I've got a daily log that goes by 15-minute increments. So for example, today I basically had do the residency prep lecture, and then I've got meetings and stuff from there. So I've mapped it all out. So I know my whole day, what's going to happen. I do that the night before, so that when I get up in the morning, I don't have to sit and think, oh gosh, what do I have to get done today? I find that I'm more productive if I have this done. It also encourages me to get up. So like I said, some days have been harder to get up than others, and some days I failed. I haven't gotten up when I wanted to get up. But the days that I have activities that I have to do, especially my 7:30 morning lectures, I'm up, right? So having this is very, very helpful. And I think it's more helpful to do it in 15-minute increments than hour increments, because an hour is a lot of time. And if I can do 1 or 2 tasks in a 15-minute time block, I've got a win. And it's very important to get a win as early in the morning as possible, whatever that is. And so an example of doing that is there's a book by a Navy SEAL, William McRaven. I don't know, has anybody heard of that gentleman? He's a Navy SEAL. Anyway, he wrote a book called Make Your Bed. And it's great. You can hear him, you can YouTube him. He did a speech on Make Your Bed. So by making your bed, that's a win that you've done. First thing in the morning, it takes 2.5 minutes, depending on how many pillows you have on your bed. Maybe it takes a little longer. But anyway, you've got your bed done. It looks great when you walk in. You're not going to go take a nap because the bed looks great. And then when you get home at the end of the day, if it was a really rough day and you don't feel like you got anything accomplished, and even like today, you don't get to go anywhere, but if you get to the end of the day and you're ready to go into your room for the evening, the bed's made, and it just gives you a nice feeling. You smile because you like your surroundings, right? You want things to look nice and neat. So anyway, make your bed. I encourage you to do that, even for a couple days, and see if it makes a difference for you. Okay, tip number 5 for daily planning. I want you to allow some daily space for emotion, because there are going to be emotions, whether they're exhibited by you, your children, your family members. You get an email, you're asked to do something, whatever it is. And don't push through things. If you're finding that you're not productive and you're not getting done what you want to do, take a break, but it needs to be a physical break. Jumping jacks, go for a walk, change your surroundings, get out of the environment that you're in. And it has to be something physical. Listening to music, research shows that that's a wonderful mood changer, immediate mood changer. And that just takes a couple minutes as well. So I encourage you not to fight through it. Go ahead and just take a break, give yourself that grace. And don't take too long of a break though. Don't go Netflix binging on me. You got to do something physical and then come back into work. Again, with the planning of the 15-minute increments, I also encourage you to only block 40 to 50 minutes of each hour and have the last 10 or 20 minutes for that white space or that relaxation or whatever that you need to do. You can't constantly be on. And when I taught the students how to prepare for boards, we went into great detail on how to do this. It's all research based. So again, no more than 40, 50 minutes, and try to give yourself a break. Again, I don't always do all these things. I'm just saying this is the stuff that works. So do as I say, not as I do all the time. Okay, next thing, tracking your goals and progress. At the end of the day, I would like you to write down one thing that you felt good about. And if it was just making your bed, that's it. But having that mental, physical win is super, super important. And it's going to help your moods and your spirits. It's also going to help you be more productive. Okay. And tracking your goals and your progress. So like I said, when you make these goals, they need to be trackable and attainable, measurable. And if you need help with making goals and don't know how to do those things, you can always reach out to us. But tracking those, a tracked number grows. So writing things down, pen to paper, it's psychological and research-based as well, that when you write down things, the brain will start to search for those activities and you will find that you get those done better. Okay. The next one we talked about a little bit was having some personal time and space. So number 8, keeping the routine that you had before we had to go into this shift the best that you can. I understand that some people can't, especially if you have children and you're doing the crisis schooling that I talked about. You may only be able to do your work on nights and on weekends. That's just what you have to do your pivot. But the best that you can, try to keep what the routine that you had before. You will find that you're definitely more productive. And then number 9 is going to be watching your influences. That's really, really important. There's 3 main things that affect us. And there's a book called The Compounding Effect by Darren Hardy. It's a great book to read. The 3 things that do affect us, the first is our input. So knowing what and who you're listening to. You become the 5 people that you hang around. And during these times, if there's a lot of negative energy around you, you don't want to become that negative energy as well. So you might need to love people from a distance at this point. Turn that negative energy off. Definitely turn the news off. So I told you earlier in the presentation, I was going to tell you how I'm getting my information. So first, of course, is from the university. So my administration is the first thing. The second thing is the cdc.gov. The third resource is from the mayor of the city. And if you text COSA.gov, it's capital COSAGOV, to the phone number 55000, you will get the announcements when the mayor makes his addendums to whatever he's doing. So instead of watching the press release and hearing CNN make a comment about it and Fox News make a comment about it, that kind of thing, I just get straight facts. This is what the mayor said. This is what he wants to do, and it's done. And I only get those things maybe sometimes it was every day in the beginning. Now I'm getting it maybe once a week. But I get all the information I need to know. And just like we talked about, you need to start wearing masks in the city. I got that last night. So I'm like, okay, I need to wear my mask. So it just helps minimize all the chaos. The second thing that affects us is who you're associating with virtually. So turn friends off that are negative or not serving you. If they're not positive for you and you can get away from them, go ahead and snooze them for 30 days. We don't need to hear everybody's opinions that are negative. Finding a power partner, finding that accountability partner is going to be crucial. We've got, what, 20 residents, Dr. Trevino? Oh, he's muted. So yes, thumbs up. So, you know, you guys are a great resource for each other. What a beautiful thing that you guys can interact with each other. You guys could get on Zoom calls. There's so much opportunity here that you guys can network and that kind of thing. We even talked about the 3 residents that are in-house at the university to go ahead and do a Zoom call with the 4th years, just to talk about, you know, how they're feeling, because you're closer to them than we are. Every year you guys stay the same age, and every year we get a year older, so our distance keeps going. But so you guys can relate to each other a little bit better. I know you guys have Facebook pages and Instagram pages. We're definitely stronger together. So having that resource. The third thing that affects us is our surroundings. So if you can, try to find a happy place, a spot that makes you feel good. Your workspace. Granted, mine looks like a bomb went off, and of course I don't have that in the picture. But having a place that is more calming and clean and organized is going to make you feel better. So thinking about that, and I look outside my window because I like to be outdoors. So I'm looking through a window when I work during the day. And then the last thing that I want to tell you is kind of a combination of things. I want you to focus on what you can control. There's only certain things that you can control, but one of them is how you react to things. So there's some quote somewhere, and I'm not going to say it right, but you know, how we react to things is 90% of the problem. 10% is the actual problem. So how we react to things is really important. And investing in your mentorships that you have with everyone. There's a lot of knowledge that's available, so we really need to take advantage of those things. For those of you looking for employment, there's going to be a virtual job fair. I signed up for it because I'm kind of interested. I want to see what it's all about. Dr. Trevino sent out this link, so you have to sign up and register. I did that the other day, so if that's something you're interested in doing, I would definitely encourage you to do that. So final thoughts before we end today. Know that all of this is temporary. Things are changing, you know, not as quickly as they were, but just know that these hard times are temporary. And I'm about to get cat bombed. Sorry, I didn't put them up. You are going to be stronger on the other side of this. I know from personal experience, and many of you do as well, that when you've gone through a hard life struggle that you weren't expecting and you had to go through it, you definitely become stronger on the other side of it. So you're going to be a more beautiful person than what you already were when we're done with all of this. If you feel stuck, I really, really want to encourage you to reach up. If you need help, reach up as well. And the other thing I want you to do is do the opposite of what fear would do. So fear stands for false evidence appearing real. So do the opposite of what somebody with fear would do. And fear and faith can't live in the same house. So I'm not saying that you may never feel fear, but if you do feel it, start thinking about how can I instead of what if, and thinking about how you can make things pivot. And the last thing that might help you is write down one thing that you're grateful for every day. Even though we're in a different time, there's so many things that we can do and be appreciative for that we all know. So that's pretty much everything I've got for this. I hope it was helpful. Are there any questions? We have a couple minutes before we need to log off.
I know you recorded this lecture. Can we get a copy of it? I think a lot of this stuff would be really good for me to share with family members and friends. It was a really good lecture. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'll send it out to all the residents. Sure. And then anybody else that needs it, just email me or email Dr. Trevino.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Schmidecki. I really appreciate, the message that you're sending here. I always enjoy your presentations. I love when you're presenting at faculty retreats and things like that. I mean, this is the kind of information that, we don't really get anywhere else. And it's extremely valuable and helpful, especially in times like this. So thank you very much. I very much enjoyed it. I will, put a copy of this recording, like in Dropbox or something like that, and I can send out a link to the residents. Before we wrap up, I do again want to thank all the residents who presented yesterday. That was phenomenal. Everybody did a fantastic job. We had over 1,000 people, across the country that attended that webinar. The feedback has been, extremely positive, and we're looking forward to doing it again next Thursday. Those of you that are presenting next Thursday, you should have a link already to join that webinar. If you do not, contact myself or Dr. Fortenberry or Holly Green, and make sure that you are able to get in there without any trouble. We have a presentation next week. Let's see if I can find my schedule. Probably not. I don't have it here in front of me. So next, no, let's see here. I'll have it in a second. Yes, so Dr. Major, some of you may know Dr. Major, remember her. So she will be joining us for a conference next week. So we look forward to having all of you join us then. And does anybody have any comments or questions before we wrap up here? So Bailey indicates that, yes, she does have the link. The link was sent out, so everybody should have it. Okay, well then in that case, thank you all for coming out today. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend.